Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Spoiler Warning Podcast. This is review number 673 with our review of Pig. I'm Christopher Schnese.
And I'm Stephen Miller.
And if you're joining us for the first time, the Spoiler Warning Podcast is a weekly film review program. Each week in the show, we're going to dive in, debate, discuss, and argue over the latest films coming to a streaming platform near you. This week, we're talking about a film that you can rent that just came out that is only $6.99 to rent on
Hell yeah.
most streaming platforms.
Can you imagine?
It is amazing.
I think you can buy it for not that much more. For some reason, I bought it. I was just like, maybe I'll want to watch it a second time.
Which might be true. I mean, you might want to. I definitely
we'll find out.
if it's within a few, if it's in with within $2, I always buy it for sure. Like you sent me that comedy special, and it was like rent for $4.99 or buy for $5.99. I was like, I guess I'm just gonna buy it.
Oh yeah, I definitely bought the Rory special.
But yeah, we are here talking about this film. I think this film's been getting a bit of buzz. I think. I really hadn't heard anything other than there was a movie that had Nicolas Cage in it, and it was called Pig, and my mind went to a lot of places.
Right.
And when you said that it was getting a lot of buzz, I was like, is it now? Like I thought for sure it was getting buzz in like all the wrong ways, or the kind of ways that you might want to go see like a crazier movie. And then you were like, no, right. I think it's like getting like people go to it to see it because it's Nick Cage and there's a pig in it, and then what they get is a film that might draw them in more than what they were expecting. So I was definitely game. Do you want to talk a little bit about like what you'd heard and like why you were excited to see it?
Yeah, so I did. I tried to mostly avoid any details of the movie, but definitely the sort of people I follow who were praising this movie, they were not praising it in the way that you would praise like Color Out of Space or whatever, these like psychedelic, violent Nick Cage movies that have been happening in recent years, which there are people who love that, right? That is not considered terrible Nick Cage the way a lot of the B movies are, but still it is a choice. Like you can tell when people are praising that kind of movie, they talk about like, all right, it's pretty wacky, but I gotta say this movie was rad. The discourse around Pig was very much like, wow, I am shocked at how good that movie was. Like there were many people who seemed genuinely surprised. Yeah. And that was enough for me of like, okay, you were genuinely surprised about the movie of Nicolas Cage as John Wick going after his truffle pig. I'm in. Like, tell me. So I tried to avoid, like, I didn't know where it was set. I didn't know what decade it was set in. Like, I knew very little about the movie, but I had heard enough positive buzz.
So you didn't even watch the trailer?
I must have seen a teaser at least, because I remember him whistling and the pig coming to eat with him. But I don't remember anything that would have indicated like I mean, it isn't a spoiler. Like Portland is in this movie. Like I don't remember Portland being in the movie or the modern day food scene necessarily being in the movie.
So you didn't remember Alex Wolff's car?
Yeah, I don't remember his car.
Okay.
I don't know what I saw. Maybe my memory is just really bad. But yeah, I didn't hear a lot of specific buzz. I just knew people loved it. Yeah,
you might have seen one of those like animated banners on like IMDb or something, and like in your head that you converted that into full trailer or something.
Yeah, I'd believe it.
Cool. Well, Stephen, are you ready to figure out if this film lives up to the hype?
Oh, are you going to do an impromptu review of Prisoners of Ghostland? Didn't you see that one at a festival? This is the one where he had like explosives in his testicles and around his neck and on his hands or whatever. I think it was a Sundance one this year with Nicolas Cage that I did not watch, but I think you did.
I was going to bring it up, but I couldn't remember the name of the film. And like you said, Prisoners of Ghostland. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? I was like, oh, he's talking about the thing I almost talked about. I did not finish that movie.
Okay.
That was one of those times where I was like, it's one of 16 movies I'm cramming into like 3 days. And I said, nah, you know what? I think I got everything that I'm going to get out of this movie, and I just bailed out of it. Pig, I did watch all the way through.
Cool.
So we could do this review right.
I'm glad. That's a rave review right there.
But yeah, so what do you say we get into this review, Stephen?
Let's do it.
We're going to take a listen to the trailer for Pig, and then we're going to come back and give you a review.
I'm looking for a truffle pig. Someone stole her.
I don't understand.
Tell him who you are.
You made the right choice, being out there in the woods. There's nothing here for you anymore. There's really nothing here for most of us. Buy yourself a new pig.
What are you thinking?
I remember every meal I ever cooked. I remember every person I ever served. You live your life for them, and they don't even see you. You don't even see yourself. We don't get a lot of things to really care about. Who has my pig?
All right. So that was the trailer for Pig. It is the story of a once prolific chef in the Portland area who now has sort of retired to the woods where he lives out his days making food for just himself and his lovely little truffle pig until one day when somebody takes that pig and he has to go on a little mission to try to get his pig back. Stephen Miller, what did you think of Pig?
First of all, I want to say I definitely didn't watch the trailer because I am annoyed at how many good lines that trailer gives away. Even though I think the way the trailer is structured, you would not receive them as good lines the way that they hit in the actual movie.
Yeah.
But I'm glad I hadn't seen it because some of those were like the quotes I had jotted down while watching this movie to remember. I loved Pig. I watched it kind of as a scavenging expedition and then texted you after and was like, yo, I think this is a movie we should talk about.
Yeah.
However you feel about it, and I'm curious how you'll feel about it. It is certainly not the typical Nick Cage vehicle that you were expecting. It is definitely doing something different. I know everyone says this about everything from like WandaVision to like, I don't know, probably Ted Lasso or shit, but like Pig is definitely a movie about grief. Like 100%. It is a movie about grief, about coming to terms.
I'm so upset with you just throwing shade at Ted Lasso because you haven't watched it yet.
I'm just saying everything in the cultural discourse now, people say it's about grief. That just is like the go-to statement. But this movie is very much about coming to terms with your past, about the things you maybe don't want to escape from, about how you relate to memory. It is a lot about sense memory, about how certain things bring you back to a particular moment. And it's also kind of like two of my favorite movies from last year, Sound of Metal and Nomadland, and it's very much about like embracing the present, embracing the stillness, being okay to just let life be at you. And I think there's something I really just loved about the feeling of this movie, of Nick Cage as this very, very, very direct person. He like just says what he means. He has like few social graces. He is covered in blood at the beginning of this movie and he never wipes it off like the whole time. Like he is ridiculously direct. And yet he's also this guy who is just this vehicle for like, you only get a few things to really care about. What you care about, let's cut through the bullshit. And I think there was just something like I found very, very, very moving about this movie. It's also a movie about Nicolas Cage going on a mission to find his truffle pig. And it's fucking weird. There is a world built in this movie, or like a world vaguely built in the side. Yeah.
Of Portland cooking.
Yeah, there are things that we see that are like, well, I could definitely watch a movie just to learn what that is about, but we're not even going to deal with it. We're just going to have a scene and then move on. And I I loved it. Like, it is, even though I wanted to review this movie, it's hard to really talk about because it, like, the movie is much more about the feeling of the movie than I think it is about, like, plot points that happen in the movie. But I just thought it was, like, so beautifully well made. I love the opening bits that I mentioned to you before, feel like First Cow, like a landscape that he's just in, him and his pig living out in the forest, finding truffles, cooking, him having this like joy in cooking the perfect dish, a truffle tart that like we can't really even see, but you know it tastes delicious anyway.
Yeah.
I loved when like Alex Wolff comes into the picture and we kind of get like the real world juxtaposed against this crazy guy in the woods. The moment he gets to Portland and it becomes so much more about him like visiting his old haunts and about us piecing together who he used to be and what he meant to different people. Anytime food becomes a factor, as it does, like very importantly at kind of the like major climax of the movie, it's just beautiful. Like I cried watching people cook food in this movie. Like ugly cried, not like I'm sitting alone and I felt like a little misty. I was just like legitimately crying while somebody butchered a squab.
I will get to it. I cried when somebody ate that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was the whole scene. Everything about it is just beautiful.
Like
there's a Bruce Springsteen cover in the movie that made me cry.
You are a sucker for those.
I really am. They definitely did a. No, I won't. I won't spoil it. Just forget There was that movie like Tumble whatever that you made me see.
Oh yeah.
Before
Tumble down. Tumble down.
Yeah, they pulled the Tumble Down, and it worked. It's just I don't know. This movie just so confidently like weaves through this kind of dreamlike world where nothing should really make sense, but it is so grounded in Nicolas Cage's like sadness and the things that he's carrying with him and how he just desires to like have peace and do one thing that he loves doing. And the whole movie just feels so meaningful around him. There's a scene in a hipster restaurant that Wikipedia insists was called Eurydice, and it definitely isn't. It starts with an F, but Wikipedia is just like lying to me repeatedly.
Well, you own the movie. You can go back and find it.
Yeah,
right?
I'll go back afterwards and correct it. But where he like deals with kind of modern cooking, deconstructed scallops on an emulsion of something, and just the conversations he has in that scene.
Can I ask you a foodie question?
Sure.
So, if you have a deconstructed burrito, right? It means like all the constituent parts of the burrito, like you'd have the meat over here, and then you'd have like, you know, the pico over here. Like it's just like all the ingredients separated, right? That's what deconstructed means, right? How do you deconstruct scallops? Because those are already self-contained.
I have no idea, and I don't think the chef in this movie knows how you deconstruct scallops. I almost want to think that was like a little foodie in joke or whatever, because it's like a meaningless idea. But I could be crazy. Maybe you like dry a scallop and have a scallop powder, and then you juice it and put that in a marshmallow, and now you
make a scallop powder paste and then form it into the shape of a scallop. That's
it's a D and then reconstruct it.
Yeah, reconstructed scallops.
Exactly. Very, very different. Like the thing is, I found that scene like very funny and kind of biting. And also weeks ago, I ate at Lazy Bear, which felt a lot like that, and I loved it. So like, I'm a sucker for the same thing I'm making fun of.
But also, you're making fun of the people who served you that food, not the people eating it.
Yeah, no, I was above it.
Yeah, the real sin is like if you genuinely want to make that food, then you should, because that is what you want to do. But this film is saying that if you really want to make burgers at this gastropub, that is what you should actually do. So there's not a problem consuming that food if that's what you really want to do.
Yeah, or making it if it's what you really want to do. It's just today's journey begins with the scallop. That is probably a kind of fake thing that Nick Cage isn't down for. But I I'm just going to let you say what you thought about the movie. I loved it, and I can't really explain it, but it just moved me many times, and I was so glad that I watched it.
Yeah, so I think this film isn't about what it is, and it is about what it isn't. This is a film where it's like, in theory, this film is John Wick, right?
Right.
John Wick, if it wasn't this violent murderer and instead like a really, really proficient chef who was really, really well known before he sort of went back into the woods and decided to live on his own and try to get away from the people. I mean, it's like down from the sake of, I mean, if I can compare it to another Keanu Reeves film, it's also a little bit like Constantine. If Nicolas Cage is Constantine and Alex Wolff is Shia LaBeouf's character, where he knows this guy is like a big deal and he's just constantly following him around and he's like trying to take him on this adventure to the city to go into this underbelly and kind of see all this stuff. That is sort of the premise of this film. That is what you're watching. That is the beats you're hitting. But none of that is what this movie is actually about. As Stephen has already said, this film is about grief. It's about memory. It's about the way you tie things that you do, things that you eat to these different moments in time and how much any one of those moments can mean to you at any one given time. And I think that for me, this film was intriguing all the way through. But when this film becomes Ratatouille is when this film really solidified for me as being like a brilliant film. And that's when I started weeping, where it's like, to me, I think that, you know, there are a few different films I've seen over the course of, you know, doing the podcast and like, you know, watching films where it's like the film itself is nice and is a journey and you're watching things that are interesting. But what it really comes down to is the final actions that a character does or takes or sees, and you experiencing the entire thing that you've gone through to this moment blossoms into what you're actually paying attention to, and like it becomes a thing. Like, so for instance, two films that are in the same bucket because they're from the same creators and have the same star, but like Another Earth and Sound of My Voice are two films where like you can watch it and they're interesting the whole time through, but when that film clicks is right at the end when you see a thing in Another Earth or you see a thing in a Sound of My Voice, where like it's the payoff for everything that you've been watching. It becomes like the thesis for the film, and you're like, man, this is fucking beautiful. And it really hits you, and you're like, shit, like this, like, because as you said, like there's a lot of lines in the trailer which relate to scenes where important things are being thought about. And in the trailer, they don't have the same weight as you understanding the context within the greater narrative of what you're watching. And it's just like sitting down to watch this story that is like a non-violent John Wick and have it morph into this like story about what it means to be alive, and like any moment that you have that is the most important thing to you, or even people around you, what is tied to that moment and what it means to have been an outsider as part of that moment. And like there's like a lot more happening in this film than is just surface level, and I'm not even going to pretend to understand or pick up on all of it, but it definitely, it's like there's always every time Nicolas Cage sits at a table and talks to somebody, pay attention, because you could write a whole paper on just that conversation that happens. And I think
and he like changes the people that he talks to, which is an interesting thing in the movie. It's kind of like it is Nicolas Cage going after his pig, and in the process revealing something about everyone that he meets. But it's just every scene of dialogue just has so much happening underneath it. I'm also not smart enough to understand it. I just can feel that it matters.
Yeah. And I think that's, it's one of those things where it's like, this film is not, it's not, there's no one thing in this film that makes you walk away from it and go like, man, that was fucking great. It's just the overall feeling you get. It was, so Jamie fell asleep while I was watching this movie, and like, it was done, and she sort of like half woke up, and I just told her what happened in the film, like while I'm like wiping tears out of my eyes, and she was like, that's it. Like on paper, the events chronologically don't mean a damn thing, right? Like, you're like, why did I even watch this movie? But in the context of the life the character has led and the world that you're inhabiting and the people whose lives have been touched without even them knowing it, it like all has this weight that you'll never communicate unless you had observed it through the eyes of the people who are there. And I think that like this film is like doing a magic trick that makes it really, really impressive. But also I could imagine somebody watching this movie and just hating it. Right. But it's like, this is I don't know. It's, as I said, it's doing a magic trick. And I really appreciate what that trick has done.
Yeah, it's definitely doing a magic trick. And I think the movie, it feels the same way that it's like, it is what it's about. Like, it feels the way it means, where like it's all about sense memories and how like certain things just tie you to a particular emotion or they recall things or they trigger feelings inside of you that you kind of forgot you had. And the movie flows that way, where it just like, it knows that the perfect little moment, even when you try to explain it later and it won't translate at all, will just like hit you in the gut. And I feel like I'm having trouble verbalizing it, but I feel like an interesting thing about the movie is like, by living in the present, by like savoring things, the characters are drawing meaning for what the thing represents. Like, they eat a meal and they're fully experiencing and loving the meal, and that makes them remember what that meal is a metaphor for. Or they're looking after a lost pig, and they love the pig, and they have so many feelings for it. And it isn't that the pig is just like a symbol. It's like, by loving the pig, he is loving someone else or paying homage to someone else. And it's like, I feel like there's just something interesting there where like everyone is so present and in the moment, and that speaks so much more than if they were like directly talking about the thing that it is that they're actually talking about. Yeah. Like I don't have a full thesis over what it means yet, but there's a bunch of things like this. And I feel like even the movie, the fact that he has been gone for 15 years and he comes back, and there are like things he's tucked away for himself. Like, there's a moment when Alex Wolff goes to like a crematorium or a mausoleum or something to retrieve some stuff that Rob left for himself years ago. And I feel like the whole movie is like, all of our memories are like these little lovely things that like we dig away, like we hide, and then we can retrieve later if you just know where to look. Yeah. And it, I just thought it was really, really beautiful. And I kept thinking about the movie Land, the Robin Penn movie that I hated. Just like, this is how you do that movie about the person overcome with grief that retreats into the wilderness. Yeah. There was also a great moment where he talks to a kid about a persimmon tree. That was the first time that I was like, I think I'm getting a little emotional watching this movie.
And that's the thing too, is like, I thought as that scene started to play out, I was like, okay, this is going to be like his grandson or something, right? Like, it's just a fucking kid on a stoop playing with his toy or whatever, right? And he just sits down, and there's something like, it goes back to like one of the things that I really, I have this, I mean, it can't, like, I'm formulating a sentence in my head, and I'm realizing how stupid it is, because there's a reason why this is kind of a trope that I've applied it to other things and been like wowed by it, and now I'm realizing that it literally is a trope, where have a child explain something and it'll be far more profound than any adult could ever explain it, because their limited scope on what exists provides the context you need to like think about something appropriately. But like in my head, I was thinking back to Swiss Army Man, and like some of the moments of like literally this like corpse learning how to be alive, and like a child learning how to like think about a world. And like I don't know, it's once again, it's always a magic trick, but it makes the conversation seem profound when a man towards the end of his life talks to a child at the beginning of his life about the simple pleasures of the existence of a tree on a property. And it's like, if that kid's mom came outside, there would be a situation there, right? This weird.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a bloody hunchback talking to her kid.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, it's going to be a problem. But, like, you're never. I mean, part of it was because I assumed that was I assumed that his mother would come out and would be like, Dad, what are you doing here? Why is your face beat up? But, like, as I realized, like, wait, I don't think he's related to this kid. He's just talking to him. I was never worried, obviously. I was just interested in what conversation was forming from the two of them. And yeah, I think it became, all these moments are really, really interesting. And I think that there's, there's intriguing elements that kind of play into what the underground cooking scene in Portland is. But, like, that was sort of just like set dressing for conversations that actually meant something. And I really enjoyed the film, but I also was like, I don't think I'm supposed to care about John Wick with a pig.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for the next conversation that makes me go like, dang, that's right. Interesting. I mean,
I think, again, an aspect of the grief thing is, like, the lack of a resolution. Like, you lose something and you feel like there has to be some meaningful moment that, like, makes it all make sense, or an action you can take that will turn it around. And I kind of think this movie, like State Like Sleep, or other kind of neo-noir type movies too, it is using the mission is like a red herring, kind of, where the mission is the person thinking that they can control it or change it or fix something.
Yeah.
And then there's a release kind of in the movie then saying, like, no, you can't. And there's a moment in the movie where Nick Cage falls to the ground and is, like, wailing. I mean, the audio cuts out, but I assume he's, like, screaming or yelling as he cries. And there's just something about that scene, and then immediately after how the movie plays, where it's like the stages of grief. It's like, here you go. This is your moment. Get it all out. Now, how do you live? And I just thought, like, from then on, the movie was just like, I was pretty much nonstop teary-eyed until the credits rolled after that.
Yeah. So do you think, I don't know if this even counts as a spoiler question, because I don't think this was actually addressed in the film at all, but why do you think he left society? Is it just a matter of he thinks he accomplished everything he needed to, and now he was done just living for himself? Or is there an event?
I think the person that he lost caused him to retreat from society. No. And I don't know how that timing plays with the season of his life that the pig was raised in. Because I don't know how old pigs can be.
Yeah.
But I think him living in the woods and retreating from society is directly tied to the grief aspect.
Gotcha.
And it was kind of like he lost his spark or his will to do all of those things, or he didn't want to, like, be scrutinized by people anymore. He just wanted to go somewhere where he could be, like, alone with his sadness and do things that felt meaningful without having anyone intrude on him.
Gotcha.
But again, I don't know how old pigs can get. And in the universe of the movie, this would have been like 15 years, which I feel like is old for a pig.
I don't know enough about pigs. That's one thing they didn't get into in this film.
Yep.
Cool. Any last things you want to talk about with this film, Stephen?
Finway's. The restaurant was called Finway's, or at least the chef was Chef Finway, and they only referred to it as Finway's. So that was the F word I was remembering.
Maybe it was Finway's, the U word.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I don't know where Wikipedia gets these ideas. But yeah, I don't know. I thought it was a beautiful film. I like Alex Wolff in it. I like Adam Arkin, who's the dad, Alex Wolff's dad in the movie. Obviously, Nick Cage, like definitely the best thing I've seen him do in a very long time. Yeah, it was just great, quiet, beautiful little movie.
Cool. Well, let's go ahead and get to our verdicts for the film then. Stephen, if you're going to give this a must-see, recommend with a caveat, wait for rental pass with a caveat, or a must-avoid, what would you give it?
This one I'm giving a must-see. I just thought it does so much with so little, and like you said, it's a magic trick. It is like a chef using simple ingredients that anybody could use and then preparing them in a non-fancy way, but somehow when you eat it, it's just like amazing. Like it does something and you don't know how, and when you try to explain it later, you don't have any fancy story like the story of the scallop or the deconstruction or emulsified, whatever. It's just like, then there was, there was like a tart and there was mushrooms on it and there was cheese that was done right. And like, I cried. And this movie, it just does that. It just knows how to get you even without doing fancy flourishes or plot mechanics that should get you. And I really respect that.
It's going to be a must-see from me as well. I think for me, if you aren't fully vibing on it within 20 minutes, just give it time. I think it will, it'll slowly get its hooks in you until the final end where it yanks all those hooks and they all are connected to your heart.
Yeah.
So, I highly recommend this film. All right. So, I think that's going to do it for our review of Pig. Stephen Miller, if people want to find you throughout the week, where can they do that?
People can find me at twitter.com/sdavidmiller or sdavidmiller.com.
People can find me at ChristopherInRealLife.com or Twitter.com/ChristopherIRL. You can find the podcast over at thespoilerwarning.com where you can get a bunch of the back episodes of the show. If you want to subscribe to the show, you can do so on Overcast, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, or wherever podcasts are found. If you want to know when the episodes go live, you can follow us at Twitter.com/spoilerwarning, Facebook.com/thespoilerwarning, or Instagram.com/thespoilerwarning. If you want to get a hold of us directly, you can send an email to fans@thespoilerwarning.com, or you can use the contact form on our site. Music for this episode will come from the soundtrack to Pig, so hopefully you are enjoying that. And that's this review. We'll be back next week with another one. Once again, didn't bother looking it up before we sat down to record, but there'll be stuff coming out later. So
hey, fingers crossed, A24 screening room, throw The Green Knight up there next week. Man, I believe in you. I didn't think I was going to get to see Pig, and then suddenly Pig was available, so you never know.
Yeah, I really hope that they do throw up Green Room, or not the Green Room, the Green Knight, because I am extremely excited for that one. And I don't know when I'm going to get to see it. Hopefully it's not a 45-day window thing.
Yeah, Green Room was also A24, so they've got a monopoly on the green movies.
All right. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye.